Hello to you and welcome to my 8th installment of the Voices of Rhodesian Soldiers. In my 7th episode I explained my time doing a call-up at Victoria Falls in about 78-79, where I witnessed a large invasion coming across the river at Victoria Falls, being thwarted by our security forces, artillery, armoured cars and infantry. It was spectacular seeing that, and the plan with those troops invading was to go along behind our security forces defending Victoria Falls at the bridge, and to hit them from behind and unlock the bridge so that a large crossing of regular trained guerrillas or terrorists or gooks, whatever you want to call them, could come across in a train and take out Vic Falls and proceed further southeast to Bulawayo and so on. At the end of that call-up, which I really enjoyed, I found myself back in Salisbury. I no longer worked for the Sable Chemical Company, where I was an essential worker. So basically, I had to go and find a job. I'd met a girl on the call-up at Victoria Falls by the name of Diane, and we were getting married, or got married by that stage. So I had a wife and no job. And then I saw an advert, or somebody mentioned to me that the police were looking for instructors in PATU, which is the police anti-terrorist unit. It's the military or paramilitary wing of the police, and they operated very much the same as the army, where they would get called up and go out in sticks and fight terrorists in the same way as the army did. The majority of them were farmers, or there were city guys as well. The farmers were particularly good bushmen and accurate shotters, because that's the type of life they led out on the farms. And so the majority of the work I did with them was retraining or refresher training courses, because in those days it was 6 weeks into the Defence Forces and 6 weeks out. And during the 6 weeks out, you get a little bit rusty with voice procedures and so on the radio, and you tend to pull your trigger on your rifle too quickly, and you react to it very suddenly because it gives you a fright, and so you're not very accurate. It was basically doing refresher courses, taking guys to the rifle range and zeroing in their weapons, and doing jungle lane, where we walked through a riverbed and taught guys how to react quickly and to potential attacks or ambushes. And we used to set up tripwires for them, which set off a little piece of cordite, which really annoyed them. as they tripped the wire, this thing went bang. They got a hell of a fright. But they also perfected the tactic that we developed of double tapping over open sights at a target, so that I know forces in Britain and America and elsewhere today, they have sights on top of their rifles, and they have one eye looking through that and one eye open to the side of it. Well, we basically carried our rifles raised so that if somebody moved ahead of you, you could pull that weapon up very quickly, and over open sights just double tap them. It got to the point where we could quite successfully hit a tin can at about 30 meters, maybe even a bit more, which is all you needed, more than you needed. Most contacts were about that range or even closer. So it was a bit awkward for me getting all of this police kit with the leggings and the leather strap that went across my chest and all that lot, but fortunately I never had to wear it, and I was in military camouflage kit all through the day, except the cap I wore was the standard khaki police cap. And I really enjoyed that time. And we used to go out to a place up the Borrowdale Road and turn left there. It began with a T. I can't remember it. But we went down there and we did, once again, jungle lanes, advanced to contact, flanking movements, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, like I say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I only had to work Monday to Friday. I was off on the weekends. But then the powers that be decided that we needed to train guys from scratch right through to coming out as a recruit, qualified recruit. So we got a batch of about 30 or 40 guys, and we had to train them from day one, which was very interesting. And because I'd been at the School of Infantry, I still had my course notes from the school, and I very quickly developed a program for these guys to follow. And we had 2-3 instructors, one of whom was Ian, I forget his surname, but he was very fit, and he did all the PT stuff with them and made them run and took them for runs on Saturdays before their afternoon break, and attended to them on weekends. And I taught them tactics, how to advance to contact, what to do in ambushes, voice procedure on radios, etc. So it was a full-blown course, but it was very compacted. The RLI and the Army did about 4.5 to 5 months training, and I think this was condensed down to probably 8 or 10 weeks. All the stuff that was normally done with drill and conventional war tactics and all that sort of stuff we didn't deal with. We purely taught the guys how to fight gooks in the coin phase of warfare, which is counterinsurgency. And I was pretty proud that they turned out to be a good bunch. It was a good course. We did night ambushes. We took them out to Lake McIlwain and gave them a set of maps and made them walk, I don't know, 15, 20 kilometers to a collection point in the middle of nowhere, and they all got there, and I was very proud of these guys, and you know, I would have been happy to serve with them. But in addition to this, on the weekends that I was off, I sometimes had to, probably twice a month, go with the reserve forces down the Enterprise Road, which went out to, I think it turned left to Centenary and carried on to Motoko down there, past Glen Lawn. And it was really interesting going out with these old-timers in their blue overalls and hats, and, you know, we used to get in Land Rovers and go down there with flasks of coffee and tea and sandwiches, and we'd set up the roadblocks and search the buses that were coming into Salisbury to see whether they were carrying arms or anybody that looked like a terrorist. You know, sometimes you can tell from their matted hair or just the demeanor in which they stood or the way they looked at you. I found the method of searching buses a little bit hairy and haphazard, which I corrected. I mean, there were guys positioned around buses where if anything happened, they'd end up killing each other by firing through a bus and hitting guys on the other side. So I sorted that out. I made guys stand at a distance on the other side where there was no searching going on, to make sure nobody tried to run away into the bush, and we only searched from the one side facing off-road, and the guys, another pair, stood back looking at people up on the roof as they went through their luggage, just in case a guy pulled out an AK, he could get shot. And so I think I did a better job there. We also had a machine gun up on the hill behind us to cover a greater threat to us. But I enjoyed those evenings. It was lovely. It was a bit of Dad's army. And then very, very quickly the date arrived for the independence celebrations. And by this stage, I'd been stationed out at a school, a derelict school. I forget the suburb. it was over the railway line and along somewhere in the Eastleigh area. I forget where it was. And PATU had been based there, and the election night came along, and the results of the elections were given to us, and it was the most disheartening thing I've ever witnessed. We were called into a room, about 60 of us, and we were told, even before the official announcement was made, that Mugabe had won the elections. And I know 2-3 guys literally threw their rifles out the windows, and they got in their cars or just walked out the gate, and we didn't see them again. It was very, very distressing. My wife at that point was in a hospital, the central hospital, having a hysterectomy, and I remember walking down the corridor in my police uniform. I felt so dejected. It was terrible, and people looked at me as if to say, why? What's going on? There was this air of fear. And, people running through the streets and shouting and all that sort of stuff that Mugabe had won. But prior to that, several of us were selected to be joined to heads of state that were coming to the independence celebrations. And I was allocated to Mrs. Indira Ghandi. And I had a very quick course done on how to handle a 9mm handgun. And I was given a holster and a strap that went under my civilian jacket. And about 20 or 30 of us went through this snap course. And I was allocated to Gandhi, and I met her at the airport when she came in for the independence celebrations. And I stood between Carrington, Mugabe, and watched her come down the staircase. And, I had this handgun burning under my armpit. I could easily have shot them, but I'd still be in jail or dead by now if I'd done that. But anyway, I'd been attached to Mrs. Ghandi as the liaison officer between the Rhodesian security forces and her security party. I was a /de facto bodyguard for her as well, because as I toured around with her during the day, I had to go wherever she went, to Indian schools and that type of thing, and we had to taste the food and check under the bandstands that there weren't bombs and all that type of stuff. So I spent a full day with her doing that, and then when she got a bit tired, we'd take her back to the Meikles Hotel, where she actually gave me a very nice silk cravat and necktie, and that goodie you put in your pockets, whatever you call it. And she was a very pleasant woman, very polite, and quite interested in us and what was going on. And so I spent the day with her and at the Meikles Hotel, and we sat around there, and people were coming and going, and Carrington and that other guy from America, the black guy, I can't remember his name, but they were all there moving in and out, and I just watched these people coming in and out, and I thought, all you bastards are the cause of the downfall of my country, and much celebrating going on. Well, I may have got a scarf and a cravat or whatever you call it, but some of the guys were given thousands of US dollars for the way they protected black heads of state. Others were offered jobs as personal bodyguards back in various African countries, and it was curious going to and from the airport as she went out to meet other people that she was familiar with, and seeing these guys taking up bicycles and sewing machines and all sorts of things that they couldn't get in the rest of Black Africa. And speaking to the Indian bodyguards, they said, oh, well, you must be really happy about what's happening here. And, I had the memories of half a dozen guys that I knew during the war that were killed or badly injured, and I was in no mood to entertain these guys, and they very quickly left me alone. But come towards the evening, it was the celebration at Rufaro Stadium. Everybody gathered to celebrate. I think it started at 8 o'clock at night. Now, she had been given a Mercedes-Benz by somebody that had, a lot of people donated their cars, and I think they got 5,000 US for 48 hours, the usage of their cars thereof. And so she had a nice Merc, and we had a couple of brown Peugeots, and we travelled around behind her guards in one car, and myself and a couple of others on the Rhodesian side, following that lot. And we went to the stadium on the night of Independence, 18th of April, 1981, and the place was seething with humanity. And when they saw us white guys in the back car, they all banged on the roof, the pedestrians walking along with us. And the Brits were there, their force, whatever you called it, monitoring force were there. And they said, "Oh, don't worry about these guys, just let them through, let them through." And anyway, we followed Ghandi into the parking area of the stadium, and then we went to where she was seated. Now, if you look at videos, if you look at where Prince Charles and Mugabe and all of them were sitting up on the dais, if you look at that, just to the right, perhaps just off the screen, was where I was sitting with Indira Ghandi. I was just behind her. So I was quite privileged to be there, witnessing this bit of history, and Joshua Nkoma was up there. I was very pleased to see that when Joshua Nkoma put his hand out to shake Prince Charles's hand, that the latter declined it, because Nkoma had obviously gloated over the shooting down of the Viscounts, and I don't think Prince Charles was a great admirer of him, and I've never liked that part of the royal family anyway, but I only liked the Queen, to be honest. But I admired him for not shaking the guy's hand in a public setting. Anyways, midnight approached. The crowd had gone crazy early in the evening as Jimi Hendrix had played, and people had got so disorderly that the police had to fire tear gas, and Jimi Hendrix was dragged out of the place. And then midnight came closer and closer, and then about 40 to 100, maybe a company of RAR marched into the stadium, very, very beautifully disciplined, beautifully dressed, proud, their arm, leg and hands movement just perfect, their drill was perfect. And they got booed, they got seriously booed. And then in came some Zebra, who were pretty disciplined in the way they performed, and they got a few boos and a few cheers, because obviously they're not the flavour of the month in Mashonaland. And then came in the Zandler rabble, sort of looked like a drunk millipede walking into the stadium, and they came to a halt amongst huge cheering and all that sort of stuff. And then below the dais there was a big flagpole, at top of which was the Union Jack flag, or actually the Jack only flies on a naval ship, but it was the Union flag, the one that we know, the red, the blue and the white, not the Rhodesian flag. They didn't lower the Rhodesian flag, they lowered the British flag, like it's our time of independence didn't even exist, which was very sad and very moving for me. And anyway, it got closer and closer until midnight, and then they started playing the Zimbabwean anthem, and the Zimbabwean flag was raised to the top, and at that precise moment some artillery guns were fired, a 21 gun salute, and I was very happy and pleased to see all the jittering in the audience and people ducking and diving, so you could tell that a lot of gooks were in the audience. And then planes flew over. Why the heck they flew over at night when you can't see them, but by the sounds of them they were Canberras or whatever. And I thought, wow, nobody can see these planes at night. Are they actually going to bomb us? Was this part of the massive plan to take out the enemy that had been doing its rounds up to this point with general wars and troops all over the place and rumours of a coup, But anyway, the jets flew over, nothing happened. Well, after everything died down, we escorted Mrs. Ghandi back to the Mercedes-Benz, and we couldn't get out of there. The main exit points were congested, so in the end, they just decided to ram a gate in this beautiful Mercedes-Benz that had been loaned to them. I'm sure the guy ended up paying more than $5,000 he got for it to lend it to them in repair bills. Well, they had one go at the gate, and that didn't work because the chain on the lock held tightly, not like in the movies. And so they had to turn back and get in a queue to get out of one of the main gates. So that was an interesting experience in my life. And the next day we escorted her back to the airport, and she took off. And I just had this terrible feeling of loss and sadness that had come over the country. And, I was living in Mableham at that point in time, and I used to drive home in the evenings and feeling very despondent and very depressed about what had happened. And then another incident, two incidences happened that really illustrated to me what our law-abiding country was heading into. And the first was at the Hard Square in Morris Depot. I was just about to go home early one day at about 3 o'clock, and this elderly typist who worked with us, well, she wasn't elderly, early 60s, grey hair. She was going home as well, and just prior to her knocking off, 2 busloads of these guys got out. They'd just flown in from, I don't know where, somewhere in North Africa or Russia or whatever. They got off these coaches with all these big high hats that the Russians wear with red bands on them and tapes on their shoulders and, Russian camouflage or Chinese, I don't know what they were wearing, but they were, looked a little bit intimidating. And anyway, she walked over to her motor car, which was a little VW, and she got into it, a little VW combi type of thing. And the next thing, a few of these guys peeled off from the main crowd, and about 12 of them, and they went over to her car, and the couple jumped on the bumper in the front, and a couple at the back, and then they started rocking her car. What brave heroes they were doing this to a woman, So she went as white as a sheet, and she just clutched onto the steering wheel, looking at me out the window. And I just turned around and I went inside, and there were about 6 or 8 of us instructors there. And I went into the armory, and I came out with a machine gun with a long belt of ammo, and I positioned it where it was overlooking the situation. And I said to a guy, "You know how to fire this thing, don't you?" He said, "Of course I do." I said, "Right, if things go south, you just open fire. I will take all responsibility." And then the rest of us picked up some pick handles, because we had all sorts of things in the armory, and we went outside and confronted these guys. And like I said, there were 40 to 80 of them, 2 coach loads. And we went out there with these sticks, these pickaxe sticks, and told them to bugger off. And they actually backed away. Now, if they weren't so spineless, they would have turned on us and attacked us, but it just showed you what a spineless bunch of animals these people were. And I felt confident, of course, because I had a machine gun behind me. But anyway, the lady started up her vehicle and drove away and mouthed "thank you" through the window, and she was off like grease lightning. And I said, "You guys are a bunch of bloody cowards doing this to a woman. Are you proud of yourselves? Would you do this to your mothers or your daughters?" And they looked at me And I just said, yeah, I'm glad you bastards died at Nadzongyapongwe. And then the whole mood changed. They became very agitated. So they were obviously Zanla. And they started pressing forward. And I said, if you come any closer, and I turned and pointed at the machine gun, I said, you're going to get that, okay? So just behave yourselves. And I was shaking in my boots at that point. I wasn't trying to be brave, I was just bloody angry. Anyway, I went back inside and finished off my tea, and they just sort of faded away. I don't know, somebody came to take charge of them, and that was the end of that. The other thing I experienced of the new independent Zimbabwe was when I went to have lunch. I was still in uniform, still part of PATU. This was about June, July 1981. Went to pick up my wife at Founders Building Society in Manika Road to go and take her for a bite to eat. And as I was walking across the road, I heard all this pandemonium behind me, and there was this guy running for his life with about 30 people after him with sticks and all sorts of things, and so I was in my uniform, camoed up and all that lot, and I just turned back and I went and intercepted them, and I stood between him and this crowd, and I had my hand up and I said, hey, stop this, what are you doing? He's Zapu or whatever he says. I don't like what he was saying. We're going to kill him, beat him up. So I said to him, is this your new Zimbabwe? Is this how Zimbabwe is going to be? Is this how the laws of the country are going to be conducted in the future? What happens if you end up being one of the guys chased? And as I said this, I looked to the right, and there was this huge lens looking at my face, and it was some guy from ATP or whatever, one of these news services. And funnily, anyway, I'll finish off that little story. I managed to keep the crowd back long enough. I had my hand in my pocket as if I was carrying a handgun, and my left arm was out, and I was saying, stay. And then he took off, and anyway, he had about a 5-second start before these guys got around me and took off after him. And I don't know what they did to him if they caught him. Maybe the 5 seconds let him get away, I don't know. But, that I just thought, this is what's coming. This is what's coming. Absolute lawlessness. And it was funny, 2-3 years later when I'd left Rhodesia, I was in Johannesburg with my wife, that first wife, and I was watching news. I wasn't paying attention. I was reading a newspaper, and I heard my voice. Hey, is this how law's going to be under Zimbabwe? What happens if you're one of these people one day? And I looked up, and there I was on the TV screen. They were doing a recap of Rhodesia becoming Zimbabwe. And I've looked for that video clip for 45 years. So if you ever see anything like that, contact me. Anyway, that concludes the 8 episodes of my national service, my time in the army as a national serviceman, as a territorial officer. And I could have spoken a little bit more on the things I did as a territorial officer, but we'll leave it at that. And my time as a policeman. So thank you for watching. I'm going to try and get some guys that I served with to give their stories online, but we'll see how that goes. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the 8 episodes that I've produced so far. Thank you very much. Bye.
voices.